We are here. It is time for yet another episode of Regroup. FaZe didn't bump my mic that time. We got previews. We've got talk about the pricing and stuff we'll see in regionals and sectors. The Galactic Championship tickets have been on sale for a while as of the release of this video. We've got previews, we've got leaders, we've got interesting design decisions, we've got interesting name changes that I don't think are correct, but we can go over that as well when that happens. Lots of stuff going on. Let's just get right into it with previews. First up from FFG Socials, we've got a pilot who unfortunately perished during the Battle of Yavin, but this card is actually quite cool. We're starting off here with Biggs Darklighter. They'll never stop us. 3 cost aggression heroism ground unit, 3 power, 4 health as just a ground unit, but for 1 resource aggression heroism, you can pilot a vehicle giving it +2 and +1 health, +2 power, +1 health. Rebel pilots, interesting set of abilities here. If he's attached to a fighter, that unit gains overwhelm. If he's attached to a transporter, that unit gains +1 health. If he's attached to a speeder, that unit gains grit. This is an uncommon number 150 out of 262 in JTL. This is the type of design that I think is absolutely incredible. I'm not sure exactly how viable this is going to be. I think it will be because it's a 1-cost pilot. Wedge can turn it into a 0-cost pilot. Being able to give one of your fighters overwhelm, if you can get that extra damage, you can still push damage to your opponent's base. That's quite good. Throwing it on a transport like the Bright Hope means that you can give it that extra health to be able to survive maybe 1 additional attack depending on what you're going for. And being attached to a speeder giving it grit is not something that I've really seen yet so far. We do have those 2 speeders right off the bat. There's technically 4 total, but 2 speeders that are relevant to Rebels. The Snow Speeder from set 1 and the Rogue Squadron Skirmisher from set 1 as well, who do have more health than power, so you can ambush, play Biggs onto that, give it grit so that its next attack is going to end up being even more powerful than it was before, and that's really cool. Transport, I believe, is effectively Biggs getting off of Tatooine to Yavin to set up for the Battle of Yavin. The speeder is the T-16s that him and Luke piloted back on Tatooine. That's literally a line ripped from the movie. And that's pretty cool. Then obviously fighter being a fighter. You can, if you're playing Wedge, you can red 3 and Biggs on the same turn to make your red 3 a 4/4 with raid and overwhelm. Also giving all of your other heroism units raid 1. That's pretty interesting. I do like these pilots that end up being costing 1 piloting, especially for Wedge, because he can make them free. We've got Nien Nub. We've got that independent smuggler if you want to run yellow. We've got Biggs here when you want to run red. Green-red I think is going to be the main Wedge deck for Rebels, because it's basically just going to take the Sabine aggression package, but swap it over to being almost exclusively space. You can, like I said with the Snow Speeders, splice in some ground stuff, but you're going to have a lot of space options, and these pilots being decently statted on the ground means that you are going to be able to move from aspect to aspect, from arena to arena, to be able to do some cool stuff with this. So I've talked a lot about this single card, but again, like some of the other pilots we've seen, it's good enough to seem viable, and if your opponent's got that upgrade removal, at least the stats are also good enough to mean that they're viable on the ground. Next up, we've got 2 previews coming by way of Maindeck Games over on their YouTube channel, Maindeck Dan as well, plus the rest of the team. Link in the description to their video below. We've got an event, we've got a unit. They're both Han flavored. Let's start with the event we have. You're all clear, kid. This is a 2-cost Vigilance Heroism Gambit event. Defeats an enemy space unit with 3 or less remaining HP. If you do, and an opponent controls no space units, you may give an experience token to a unit. This is an uncommon number 55 out of 262 in JTL. Heroism space control. There's a lot of caveats to this to get it to its full power. I think if your opponent does have a space unit that has 3 or less remaining HP, this is worth shooting to be able to get that off the board, especially if it's a higher power unit and if you spent some effort to try to get it down to that low level, or your opponent's been slamming into your units and leaves it with 3 or less remaining HP, and you can just play this to be able to clear that unit off the board. The extra caveat of having your opponent controlling no space units to give it experience token, that is pretty interesting based upon the interaction that this is supposed to be from A New Hope, where Han helps Luke get the trench run finished, shoots Vader, Vader's ship bounces into the other TIE fighter and flies away, so that way he doesn't die as part of the Battle of Yavin. Contrived plot device, you know, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Not that huge of a deal. And then Luke blows up the Death Star with that extra experience token. It's interesting. It's fun. A 2-cost defeat a space unit as long as it's got 3 or less health remaining. is actually a good card, and I think this will see a lot of play, if not in the main deck, at least in sideboards, especially given this is a very space-heavy set. This is probably going to be an all-star in Limited with Draft and Sealed, so lots of cool things there, and as always, Twin Suns likes as much removal as it can, because you can only run one copy of anything, so this adds into Heroism and Vigilance Blue, whatever, to be able to give that extra removal. It's good in lots of good places, and that's really all that matters. We've had Boba Fett pilot unit. Now let's see what Han Solo pilot unit does. We have here Han Solo has his moments. A 5-cost Cunning Heroism ground units, 4 power, 5 health with ambush. But for piloting 2, when played as an upgrade, you may attack with the attached unit. If it's the Millennium Falcon, it deals its combat damage before the defender. +2 power, +3 health, Rebel pilot legendary, 203 out of 262 in JTL. I think this is actually a very good addition to the starter deck if you're able to get these copies of the legendary, because it is an odd cost. It does help the Millennium Falcon, which you do have at least one copy of in that deck. You can add the legendary Millennium Falcon from set 1, so you have 2 different options for this, and effectively it makes Han Solo a 2-power shoot first with 2 additional power in order to be able to do that. So that's not terrible, plus the health means that even if it doesn't defeat the thing, it can probably still survive. And then also having him be a 5-cost 4/5 with ambush means that he'll probably survive whatever he attacks into for that unit cost and still be able to do some interesting stuff on the board. I like it. I like it a lot. I think this, I don't know if this is going to be one of the more sought after legendaries, but because it does help that spotlight deck a fair amount, it'll probably be about a middling value of legendary, unless somebody pulls a complete ridiculous Han Solo deck out of their butt to be able to use this in there. To be interestingly enough, the Han 1 that we know of that does the resources might get some use out of this because of the ambush, and then also being able to use it as an upgrade to the Millennium Falcon you're running as it is already, and you're probably running 2 Millennium Falcons in that deck because you don't have to worry about the odd costs. So this could be pretty good for that deck as well, in addition to all the other things that deck is very good with. I like it. It's cool. That's good. Our first leader of the week is a leader that a lot of people have been waiting for. It's an interesting design. It's got a very important piece of text that I think should have been on all of these leaders that are of this specific type. Let's just get right to it. We have Luke Skywalker, hero of Yavin. Aggression, heroism, force, rebel, and pilot. Action, exhaust this leader. If you attack with a fighter unit this phase, deal 1 damage to unit. As an epic action on 6, you can flip this into its regular leader form, which is a 5/6 unit, or you can attach it as a pilot to a vehicle unit as a +4/+5 upgrade. This is a common number 12 out of 262. And then on the flip side, just a 5/6 regular unit, nothing else important there. But as the 4/5 attachment to an upgrade, this first line of text is very important. This upgrade can't be defeated by enemy card abilities. And then attached unit is a leader unit. If it's a fighter, it gains on attack. You may deal 3 damage to a unit. This is protected from upgrade removal. And honestly, I understand that a lot of people are going to be like, well, the leader units end up being really hard to remove anyway. Upgrades don't. This should have been on every leader pilot ability that's in the set, because it means that the leaders can't just be trivially removed with a 1-cost confiscate. They built this specific character to not be done like that, but so far they've built none of the other leaders to do that are also pilots, and I believe that is an error in design. But we have to deal with what we've got. So as it stands right off the bat, Luke is an aggressive fighter deck. You want to run fighters. In Twin Suns, him and Wedge, I think, are the perfect combination. That's actually a fairly interesting Twin Suns deck, especially if you want to run something like Wedge, Luke, and Blue. Luke is good, is a good leader. This is going to be a very good limited leader because you're going to have a lot of fighters as well. Being able to deal that damage, and then flipping into, if you could attach him to a fighter, he can do extra damage based upon whatever it is you're attacking. You could attack the base and just still deal damage to an enemy unit, because it's not to the defender, it's just to the unit. 4/5 for 6, it's expensive, but it does give you that big chunk of extra damage that you can be able to use in that round immediately, so long as your opponent does not defeat the unit that this is on. And they can't defeat this with an upgrade, the specific upgrade with upgrade removal, so you have an additional layer of protection there, and I think that makes Luke very good. I am still very high on Wedge, because Wedge gives you an overall better game plan of being able to reduce the cost of your pilots as you're using them, but I think Luke has an interesting place in being another aggressive style deck. Is it going to take over Sabine? Who knows? It could, but I'm not entirely sure as of yet. But in terms of a fun thematic pilot, I think it's cool. My one issue with this is that I wish that instead of just fighter on the leader side and the unit side, it was fighter and speeder, because it gives you a future-proof way of allowing this specific leader to be the also snow speeder leader if you wanted to use something like that. And there is a precedent for this because of the bigs we saw earlier calling out speeder specifically for the T-16s. You know who else was a T-16 pilot? Bullseyeing Womp Rats on Tatooine back home? Luke Skywalker. But we're just stuck with fighters, which is not terrible, but you know, a little bit of a flavor fail. Next up, we've got two previews coming by way of IGN, linked to their article or whatever the link was specifically in the description below. We've got an event and we have a unit. Let's start with the event. We have here Trench Run, a one-cost aggression heroism gambit event. Attack with a fighter unit. For this attack, it gets +4/+0 and gains on attack. Discard 2 cards from the defending player's deck. Deal unpreventable damage equal to the difference in the discarded card's costs to this unit. This is a rare number 156 out of 262 in JTL. Trench Run is your game closer. You want to have a pilot on a fighter and then use the Trench Run to be able to do anywhere between 9 and like 12 damage in order to be able to do this. And you have to hope that the on attack ability doesn't kill you before you get the damage off to your opponent's base. This is a super risky card to play, and because it's not an automatic win if you would succeed with the attack, I think the on attack downside is actually pretty significant unless your opponent's running a lot of card costs that are very close together. Do not play this against the control deck. That control deck will F you up because they have a lot of high cost things, because they're going to survive to be able to play their Avengers or their Devastators or whatever other high cost, their Snokes, things like that. Plus they want to have a lot of low cost things. So you could end up losing your fighter if your health is low enough with this on attack. But being able to get that 4 attack out, if you can guarantee that you're not going to take too much damage from this, you can really mess somebody up. Like I said, it's not a game-winning card automatically, but you can set yourself up in situations where it happens. FFG is known for these fun, funky win cons, alternate win cons. We've seen the Trench Run in the Star Wars LCG. We've seen the Trench Run in Star Wars Destiny. Both of them were pretty much in the LCG. It wasn't automatically win, but it did give you a lot more basis to be able to do so. And then the Trench Run in Destiny was a whole different way of that player playing the game, which was also kind of interesting. The fact that this is just kind of a one-off, whatever, it's not great, but it's cheap. It can win you the game if you do it really well, or get you very close to winning the game. It can also absolutely end you right there on the spot, which is kind of flavorful to the Trench Run because it did end Red Leader, but it didn't end Red 5. I don't know. Interesting card design. Reading it completely seems a little bit riskier than you probably want to be able to do, but 1 or 2 of these in your deck to maybe get that off. Worst comes to worst, it's just a resource, and sometimes you need resources. Next up, a unit that ties to a leader that we've already talked about. We have here Red 5 running the Trench. This is the 3-cost aggression heroism space unit, 3 power, 4 health, rebel vehicle fighter. On attack, you may deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. This is an uncommon number 151 of 262 in JTL. This is Luke's X-Wing. This is something everybody's been kind of waiting for, something that allows you to do something cool. It's red, so it ties with Luke. You don't have to go off aspect in order to be able to do that. You just do the combination there. This being a 3/4, throwing Luke onto this means that you're going to have, I believe it's a 7/9, which is a pretty good, combination there of stats. And then being able to attack with Luke on the Red 5 means that you can order your on attack triggers to use Luke's ability to damage an enemy unit, and then use Red 5 to potentially finish it off, because that's 5 total damage, 3 from Luke's ability, 2 from the Red 5. 3 + 2 is 5, Red 5. And that gives you an opportunity to be able to clear off one of your opponent's units. You could attack into one unit to clear that and use your damage ability onto another unit. You can attack into the base to be able to clear off a separate unit if you don't want to deal with that later. Or you could attack into the base, defeat one unit, clear another unit that's already been damaged by a previous thing. Lots of different combinations you can use with Red 5. This is a good card. If you're running Luke, you want 3 of these in your deck because the combo is right there. And let's talk about the last card that we had there. If you Luke, Red 5, and Trench Run, you're looking at 3-4 that goes up to a 7-9 that potentially can go all the way up to an 11-9. And that 9 health means that it's probably not going to be instantly defeated by Trench Run, but it's still risky if your opponent draws a 1 and a 10, and that deals the 9 damage to eliminate red 5 right off the bat. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful with these different things, but you can still at least order your triggers to do your damage first and then get the Trench Run buff, and hopefully it doesn't kill you. It's interesting. It's funky. 11 damage is a lot. It's not gonna win you the game unless you've already put enough damage onto your opponent's base, and on 6, you can potentially have already done that. Outside of that, this is an okay unit that needs its pieces to be really good. So it's got a very low floor, but a very high ceiling in terms of how good it's going to be. Next up, we have our third rare base this set. We've got Command/Green, and this is certainly a base. We have Data Vault. This is our command rare base, 33 health, and your minimum deck size is increased by 10 cards. This is a rare, number 24 out of 262 in JTL. One of the things I didn't mention when we were talking about the red version of this, which dropped your minimum deck size down by 5, was that it actually isn't explicitly stated how many cards the minimum deck size is, because you can use this for either regular constructed/premier, or you could theoretically use this for Twin Suns. And I guess technically you could also use this in draft or sealed to use the red one to reduce your deck size to 25 and use the green one to increase your deck size to 40. If my numbers are correct there. Data Vault here basically makes your constructed/premier decks 60 card decks and your Twin Suns decks 90 card decks. I know that there are some players out there who have a difficult time cutting their decks down to 50 cards in Premier, 50 cards in Twin Suns, honestly, sometimes. And also the new Twin Suns variant going up to 80 cards is going to be less difficult to cut cards down because you're now going to have to actually try to put cards in your deck to hit that minimum deck requirement. Data Vault increases that by 10 for regardless of the format, trading off by giving you 3 points of health. This is a base. Next up, by way of FFG socials, we have a space unit that some people might not recognize the name from, but you might recognize what it is. We have here Radiant 7, Ambassador's Arrival. This is a 7-cost cunning space unit, 5 power, 6 health, Republic vehicle and capital ship. Each enemy non-leader unit gets -1/-0 for each damage on it. When played, deal 5 indirect damage to a player. This is a legendary number 226 out of 262 in JTL. I'm gonna be honest, I actually didn't even realize this was a legendary going into reviewing this card. It's not highly valued as a legendary. However, this is anti-grit because your opponent's going to try to put damage on their grit things, and this says, no, not today, so it's whatever its normal things are. However, in combination with indirect damage, anytime your opponent puts a damage on one of their cards, it reduces their attack so long as it's a non-leader by the amount of damage that's placed on there. So being able to drop 5 indirect damage onto your opponent's side, they can either choose to deal damage to their units or deal damage to their base, and it's an actual choice because it also reduces the effectiveness of their units if the damage goes onto the units themselves. This is pretty interesting. In combination with Triple Dark Raid, you can do 5 indirect damage twice over 2 turns, 2 rounds, which is also actually pretty good, although you're still paying 7 total for it. You're paying 5 total for it because 3 for TDR and then 2 more for the difference in cost there. So you're gonna do this on the round you have 6 resources and then the round you have 7 resources. It's interesting. This is Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's Republic cruiser that was there to negotiate the end of the Trade Federation blockade at the beginning of episode 1, the political storyline for episode 1. This is a neat little ship. I've always actually been a fan of the way it's designed. In terms of a playable card, it could be interesting, but at Legendary, I think it's probably not going to end up seeing a lot of play because potentially not a lot of people are going to be seeing this card specifically. Anybody going out of their way to chase this thing down, probably going to be able to get it for cheap because it's not one of those this ends the game when it's played style cards. Interesting strategy. We'll see how effective it is in any of the formats that you can choose to play this. Next up, we have 2 previews by way of Roll for Crit. Link in the description below to their preview. Please go check it out. We have 2 different types of units. They're both rebels. One is a ground unit, one's a space unit. Let's start with the ground unit. We have here Masasi Tactical Officer. This is a 1-cost aggression, heroism ground unit. 0 power, 4 health, rebel trait. Action exhaust this unit. Attack with a fighter unit. It gains +2 for this attack. This is a common number 146 out of 262 in JTL. GTL. We have a lot of Rebel fighters that are coming out of this set, and when you add a pilot into that, there's a lot of cool things that you can work with this card. This is your turn 1 play. Your turn 2 play is going to be a fighter that you want to be able to attack with it at a later date, or if you get lucky, you could play a 1-cost fighter in space, and then this guy, and then next round you'll be able to attack and get that extra attack damage. It does have 4 health, so it's a little bit less susceptible to just being killed off the board right off the bat, but I think by the time this thing becomes effective, your opponent's going to be able to easily knock this off the board. So you're going to have to try to make sure that this is something that you can get out there and use that action very quickly in the next round and attack with a fighter unit that is very relevant, that has the pilot, that has the different things. If there is some form of X-Wing token swarm strategy, this might become a little bit better because you'd have more options for fighters, but again, 4 health, it's a little tough. You throw 2 of these down though, that might be an interesting play. One of the operators here trying to assist the Death Star Trench Run fighters during the Battle of Yavin, pretty interesting card. I don't anticipate seeing a lot of play. This is not something I would throw into Wedge myself, but in Draft and Limited, and even Twin Suns, there is actually a lot of value to this card. Our space unit here is a highly iconic space unit that half makes sense and half doesn't make sense. We have here Tontiv 4 Fleeing the Empire, a 7-cost heroism space unit, 5 power, 7 health, rebel, vehicle, capital ship, Sentinel. When played, create an X-Wing token. This is an uncommon number 252 out of 262 in JTL. 5/7, a little expensive for a 7 cost. Being a Sentinel in space actually does make sense because it is trying to protect the people inside and then trying to protect the other ships that were at Scarif by fleeing, while allowing those other rebel ships the opportunity to be able to get out. If this didn't do that, there's a high possibility we wouldn't have seen as many of the rebel forces ready to go when it came to the Battle of Yavin or battles that happened thereafter. So that's there. When played, create an X-Wing token. I imagine they just wanted more X-Wing token strategies. We had the Tranquility, which didn't generate any Clone Trooper tokens, but we had the ATTE Vanguard, which did generate the Clone Trooper tokens. So this is probably that comparable thing there. This is a unique, so you can't really play more than one of them unless you're defeating one of them to be able to do so. 5/7 Sentinel in space is not bad. I think it's actually pretty decent because it's going to be able to crack back into things that want to attack it, but at 7 cost, it is very expensive, even if you can technically drop 7/9 worth of stats down on the board with the X-Wing token. Great art here. You get to see the Tontiv, that Corellian Corvette, blockade runner, whatever you want to call it, with the Devastator in the back. Blasters over Tatooine, fleeing the Empire indeed. I'm not sure how widely used this is going to be. Our second leader is just as iconic as the first, has some interesting design here, and has a subtitle that designates a squadron name change without providing canon context for the squadron name change. We have here Darth Vader, Victor Squadron Leader, Command, Villainy Leader, Force, Imperial, Sith, and Pilot traits. Action, exhaust this leader. If you attacked with a non-token vehicle unit this phase, create a TIE Fighter token. So your TIE Fighter tokens aren't going to be able to create more TIE Fighter tokens. As an epic action on 6, you can flip him into a 5/6, or you can flip him into a pilot on a friendly vehicle without a pilot that gives him +5/+5. This is a common number 6 out of 262, in JTL. Flip side, normal units, pilot unit 5/6, no text. The upgrade is attached unit is leader units. When deployed as an upgrade, create 2 TIE Fighter tokens, +5/+5, Force, Imperial, Sith, Pilot. Victor Squadron is an interesting point because as of November 2024, that's literally a couple months ago, last year, Vader's squadron at the Death Star was still Black Squadron, according to the Visual Dictionary, which is more often than not, a canon source of information. Star Wars Battlefront 2 Inferno Squadron novel also declares this squadron as Black Squadron, and no less than 2 comics, the Vader comic and the Star Wars comic from 2020, also designate this squadron as Black Squadron. The only source of information that I have for Victor Squadron is a Star Wars Destiny card that labels him as Victor Leader, and Tyler Parrott on Twitter saying, this is Victor Squadron. Black Squadron is the Resistance Pilot Squadron. Okay, where's your source? I'm not trying to be antagonistic. It's just we're changing things for the sake of changing things, which is fine. Just say we got a directive from Disney, Victor Squadron. I'm in. I don't like it, but that's a good source. The card itself is actually quite interesting because if you're running a bunch of vehicles that are we'll say low to the ground, but just cheaper things swarm. You've got the TIE fighters, you've got the TIE interceptor, the TIE bombers. Those are all going to be able to be things that allow you to add extra TIE fighter tokens onto the board with Vader's ability. We have a pilot that's coming up that's actually pretty good. Vader's upgrade ability, while still very easily defeatable by any upgrade removal. I don't know why they didn't put Luke's text, on this character at least. If Luke and Vader had it, I still think they should have been on all the different pilots that are leaders, but at least it would have been on two of the most iconic pilots that are in this set, right? Vader creates his own squadron mates, which is kind of interesting. However, given the designs of leaders, the fact that they come into play, and much like every other unit in the game, unless it says otherwise, comes into play exhausted, Vader's co-pilots, co-fighters in the set, in the trench run, are not active in the battle. They just sit there waiting to go to the next round. So Vader can jump into his ship as a 5/5 in addition to whatever the ship's stats are and attack, but his two dudes are way in the back, goofing off, doing nothing, and that's Victor Squadron for you, right? That's how it went in the battle. The other two TIE fighters did nothing, right? I feel like you could have put these TIE tokens into play ready, and that would have been a huge swing in being able to do some interesting stuff for the overall strategy of this specific pilot. You have Vader as command/green. There's a card coming up that looks like it might be wanting to see this deck be green, yellow, command cunning, whatever you want to call it. I've said a lot of words about this pilot. It's an interesting card. It seems like it might be an aggro leader. I'm not entirely sure how well it'll do, but at least it should be fairly interesting to play in draft and sealed because it is a common and you're going to have a lot of sources of vehicles that'll be easy to use that can trigger this ability, and then Vader himself can swoop in and try to destroy the enemy's base with his big chonky stats at +5/+5. We'll have to see exactly how that works in all of the different formats that Vader would take part in. Next up, we have two previews courtesy of Woo over on YouTube. Link in the description below. We've got an event and a unit, both of which mesh with Darth Vader and what Darth Vader wants to do. So let's start with the event that leads me to believe that Vader wants to be green, yellow. We have I Have You Now, a 1-cost cunning villainy tactic event. Attack with a vehicle, prevents all damage that would be dealt to it during this attack. This is an uncommon, number 193 out of 262 in JTL. You throw this on one of your vehicles, attack one of your opponent's units. You're able to clear out without taking any other damage, or at least set it up to be cleared out by the next thing that you do. It's shoot first without the clause of taking any damage back whatsoever. You're not technically shooting first and you're not gaining any bonuses, and it is specifically a vehicle, but it allows you to do the damage or clear out an enemy vehicle that might be troublesome. This is actually a great counterplay against the Concord Dawn Interceptors, because even though they can boost their attack, if you can clear that 4 damage in one shot, you don't have to worry about it because I Have You Now says you don't take damage back. It's a very interesting card. It's only 1 cost, so it's cheap enough to be able to use. You can use it, attack with your units, deploy another unit, and prepare for the next round, or deploy other units. This does allow you, since you did attack with a vehicle, as long as it's a non-token, you can I Have You Now, then activate Vader's ability to get another token, and then do another card, or whatever the case may be. But it is a neat little combo that does fit what Vader wants to do, which is attacking your opponent's units, and continue to attack to be able to generate more of that TIE fighter advantage, and just bring out ties. The second preview is a unit, and it is Vader's TIE, but should it have been Vader's TIE? We have here Victor Leader leading from the front, a 3-cost command villainy space unit, 2 power, 4 health, Imperial vehicle fighter. Each other friendly space unit gets +1/+1. This is a rare, number 85 out of 262 in JTL. I harp on theme a lot because this is a Star Wars game that should feel like Star Wars stuff. Nothing about this makes me feel like it should be Vader's TIE. It's not shielded, doesn't feel like it's faster than any of the other things because this does have a hyperspace engine, a hyperdrive engine, which is part of the whole thing of it being a TIE Advance and Vader's custom TIE, all this other stuff. It's a 2/4 for 3, so its stats are not actually as good as other things, but it does buff up other units. But when does Vader really buff up other units other than to throw them at enemies and stuff like that? There's a lot of weird stuff going on with this card. Separating the fact that it's Vader's TIE, I think this is actually an incredible card because it does give you that +1/+1 for each other space unit, making all of your token TIEs 2/2s. and it's your Anthem effect, right? Anthem effects are enjoyable for most people. I like them a lot. I think this is a decent Anthem effect. But throwing Vader onto this, making this a 7/9, giving all your other ships +1/+1, doesn't seem like the play you really want it to be when it comes to Vader being a TIE pilot out there. Honestly, with Vader coming out on 6, I'd want to throw him on a capital ship instead of one of these TIEs. So maybe the play could have been to make this a more expensive TIE fighter with a different effect and give the Anthem to one of the other 2 TIEs that are piloted by Mauler Mythil and Backstabber. Who knows what the goal is with something like this? I don't know that I would attach Vader to this, even if it was something that was supposed to be his, or even if it was something completely different. The design of it is you probably want to protect this as much as possible, but at the same time, it has such low health, and there are so many other things that are going to be attacking and putting pressure out onto the board. Is this enough for Vader to be successful? And I don't think it is. Next up, we have one of Vader's wingmen. Let's just get right into it. We have here Wingman Victor Two, Mauler Mythil, a 2-cost command villainy ground unit, 3 power, 2 health, piloting for 1 resource command villainy. When played as an upgrade, create a TIE Fighter token. +1/+1 Imperial Pilot and uncommon number 84 out of 262 in JTL. Naming convention aside, this card is actually quite good. A 2-cost 3/2 is nothing really to write home about, but as a backup in case you need to be able to just put a unit on the ground, there's worse. This is not terrible. In terms of what it brings to the table as a pilot, it's basically a 1-cost experience token that creates another fighter that you can throw a pilot onto. So I think that's actually quite good for what this deck wants to do. Is you throw a vehicle out, you throw Mauler Mythil onto the vehicle, you attack, you get another token, you get a token from Mauler Mythil, and then you can keep that kind of engine going so long as what you're attacking with at least once each turn is a non-token vehicle, and you can keep putting that pressure onto your opponent. Giving one of your vehicles +1/+1 for 1 and creating the tie gives you basically 2 attack and 2 health value worth of stuff on the board for 1, and that's pretty good. And if your opponent knocks this out, okay, they paid whatever they paid to get rid of a 1/1. That's not that huge of a deal. So this card is very good, and I think this actually will see a lot of play in decks that want pilots, in Imperial decks, or decks that want upgrades to be able to do some interesting stuff for your units. This actually might be incredible in something like Tarkin, because you can give him the experience tokens while he's on the ground, or if he's attached to an Imperial ship, continue giving experience tokens to the ship while Wingman Victor Two acts as an experience token himself. Our last previews of the week come by way of Les Cortez. Link in the description below to their video. We've got 2 cards here, a ground unit and a space unit, and the ground unit is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. We have Iden Versio, Adapt or Die, a 4-cost vigilance villainy ground unit, 4 power, 3 health, shielded, so very similar to her leader unit ability. She's got piloting for 3 and blue and villainy. When this upgrade attaches to a unit, give a shield token to that unit. +3/+3 Imperial and pilot traits, a rare number 36 out of 262 in JTL. There's not really too much to go on with this. Very effective. Iden wants to generate shields. She generates a shield for herself if she's dropped onto the ground. She generates a shield to whatever she's piloting based upon doing that 3 cost. She's a little expensive as a pilot, but being able to give a shield token and +3/+3 means you're not invulnerable to damage for a turn, but you're not vulnerable to just being blown off the board by damage that turn. If you can throw this onto a lurking TIE Phantom, there's a lot of damage you can do with that card, being able to basically be a 7/5 on attack with a shield token that your opponent can't just ambush into to take it off the board. That could be pretty spicy in a blue-yellow deck. She's great. She's got good options. I think her pilot is a little expensive, but that's something you're going to have to deal with, being able to get as much value as you can out of it. And if your opponent spends 2 or 3 to get rid of it, you're just going to have to deal with it. Also from Star Wars Battlefront 2, we have Corvus, Inferno Squadron Raider, a ship specifically designed for that game. 5-cost Vigilance Villainy Space Unit, 4 power, 5 health, Imperial Vehicle Capital Ship, Restore 2, which is fantastic. When played, you may attach a friendly pilot unit or upgrade to this unit. Defeat all upgrades on that pilot and remove all damage from it, the reminder text tells you. This is a rare number 38 out of 262 in JTL. I'm going to look at this art real quick here. I think they may have made a mistake in terms of what they wanted represented, because it looks like this X-Wing is fighting with the Corvus against TIE Fighters, which does happen towards the end of the campaign in Battlefront 2 and also the DLC expansion. And that doesn't track for this being a villainy card. Although Kira has had the same issue in set 2, so we'll just deal with it, right? 4-5 in space with Restore 2 for 5, that's pretty decent. Being able to take a pilot that's damaged on the ground or is in trouble and being able to just straight up attach it to the Corvus is pretty cool. Your combination could be Iden with the shield. She could attack on the next round to clear something out, lose the shield, maybe take some damage, whatever the case may be. Play the Corvus on 5 to be able to pick up Iden and allow her to give her bonus. She wouldn't be able to give you the shield because it's not being played as an upgrade, it's just being attached. I hope that they do give us a little bit of clarification if it's any upgrade or if it has to be specifically a pilot upgrade. It only says pilot unit, but my assumption is that it's going to be ruled as pilot unit or pilot upgrade. Right now, I'm going to assume that, and that's what we'll talk about. You can move any of your pilot upgrades from one of your units to another, or pull up your pilot unit if it's on the ground and do some fun stuff with that. Interesting things here could lead to some interesting stuff, maybe give you a slight bit of counterplay to Survivor's Gauntlet. Ultimately, 4-5 with Restore 2, pretty decent, being able to get that health off of your base, as a lot of the Inferno Squadron stuff is able to do. And in a rare turn of events, Saturday dropped one last batch of previews. I know that I said the last preview was the last preview. I was wrong. Ice Cave Radio dropped out their weekly episode, and they had 2 previews for us, which they saved all the way to the end of the episode. We have here 2 units that fit the piloting theme of the set. Let's start with the generic one. We have Interceptor Ace, a 3-cost vigilance villainy ground unit, 2 power, 3 health with grit as the ground unit, but for piloting at the same cost, you can attach it to a friendly vehicle without a pilot, plus 2 power, plus 3 health. Attached unit gains grit, Imperial pilot traits, a common 34 out of 262 in JTL. This is very expensive, especially considering the fact that, as we've talked about the entire preview period, upgrade removal is cheap. This is expensive, the removal is cheap, it's difficult. However, there's some interesting situations that could come up with the Interceptor Ace because it's basically the same thing regardless of where you play it. By itself, it's either a 2-3 with grit on 3, which is not great stats, but with grit, if you can throw an additional upgrade onto it, could be interesting. And then with the piloting, being able to give its stats to whatever vehicle it pilots, it actually might serve a very interesting purpose in something like Iden, especially with the new Iden stuff, or even Kira, being able to throw this onto a vehicle and then on your next round, flip so that way the vehicle can get even more damage coming out. And then you have combos later on with stuff like Overwhelming Barrage and the First Light, things like that. Stuff that could end up being very interesting for the Interceptor Ace. It's expensive. It's not as good as an effect or even as good as a unit as Chewie is, but I'm not ready to immediately discount it yet. This is definitely going to be a limited all-star draft and sealed. If you get this and you're playing blue and you want those Imperial pilots or even just a blue villainy pilot in general, this is going to do a lot of work for you so long as there's not too much removal for upgrades in the limited environment. And given that Twin Suns, 1 copy of a card in any single deck, it's another pilot that you can do pilot things with, and that's not terrible. And bringing up the rear, the other half of the Wingman for Darth Vader during the trench run, we have Wingman Victor 3, Backstabber, 3-cost command villainy ground units, 4 power, 3 health as a ground unit, but for 1 cost piloting, you get a +1/+1 token, basically. It's not a token, but, and then when played as an upgrade, you do actually get an experience token to another unit. This is number 86 out of 262, an uncommon in JTL. Your combo here is going to be round 1, either a TIE Fighter or a TIE Bomber or some sort of 2-cost vehicle that you want to throw down. Your round 2 play is Mauler Mythal into another token, attack with Mauler Mythal, Backstabber into one of your other vehicles, and then give that token to Mauler Mythal to protect him, and then you have a really interesting combination of cards on the board that are going to be able to do some interesting stuff for you when it comes to basically attacking your opponent's base, maybe attacking your opponent's units. Vader gets you that extra TIE Fighter when you do attack with that non-token vehicle that Mauler Mythal should be on, and you can generate a bunch of interesting things as a result thereof. I don't know if this is going to combo well with Vader's Flip, because Vader's Flip does generate those 2 TIE tokens. Then you could Mauler Mythal 1 token, Backstabber the other token, and give an experience token to, let's say, Victor Leader, if that's what you're attaching Vader to. But I don't know that that's going to be strong enough. We're going to need to see more things that want to mesh with Vader card, whether it's in yellow or in blue or in red, that really wants you to be able to use these piloting strategies. These two guys, Mauler Mithla and Backstabber, I think are very good pilots, especially given that they're one-cost pilots, so they're cheap to play, and they're not really that impressive to have to remove. But if there are other things that allow you to do stuff based upon having pilots in villainy, these two could be definitely a very good combination of cards to have in your deck. Honestly, I see these as being better in Tarkin, especially using the Tarkin yellow TDR strategy so that you can start attaching pilots to the vehicles when they come out permanently. So there's that in there for you. Outside of that, they're going to be good in limited. They're going to be easy-ish access. You're going to have some fun with them. And honestly, isn't that all that really matters? Just having fun. And finally, for this last week, FFG did a live stream covering some information that we have for sectors and regionals, including the dates and locations for each of these. There's an article that I'm going to be going off of here for this section. It's also linked in the description below, as well as the qualifier information and registration for both the European and United States sections are going to be in the description below. All three of these down there. Go check them out. We'll talk about everything we can. We're going to try to get this done quickly because I'm sure it's information most of you already have, but for, you know, information's sake. Organized play fans, yay, yada yada. So our season 0 sector qualifiers, we've got 2 in the States, one April 5th through April 6th in Denver, Colorado, and one April 26th through April 27th in Richmond, Virginia. These are going to be hosted by Star City Games. If you've ever been to an SCG Con, that you're basically going to have this, but I think these are independent events that are hosted not during an SCG Con. So we'll have to see exactly how that ends up working. European sector qualifiers are going to be March 29th and 30th in Milan, Italy, and April 5th through 6th in Liverpool, United Kingdom, England, whatever you want to call it. These are hosted by OPE. We've actually seen a lot of OPE events run over the last year. So given that they've been doing it basically by themselves, FFG just tapped them to make sure that that gets done out there, takes it out of their hands. We do have some information here on what the sector qualifier stuff looks like. We've got a bunch of mats here that are available, plus some prize wall cards here. We've got a Han Solo, a Chewbacca, Red 3, Agent Callus, and Admiral Akbar, all from set 1. So there's placement mats that that were mentioned in the previous article, plethora of prize wall items up for grab. We got the all art promos that we talked about. That prize wall will also have several different game mats featuring art from across the first few sets, including Kylo Ren, Commander Cody, and more. Finally, you'll have some soft crate deck boxes themed around Poe Dameron and Black One, a perfect fit for your jump to light speed decks. Hint, 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 hint. We also have additional prizes for the main tournament that they didn't share before. The first of these prizes is a paid flight and entry to the Galactic Championship event for the winner and the runner-up of each sector qualifier. So that's pretty good. Get yourself a trip over there to the Galactic Championship in Vegas. That means that if you take the finalist table in the sector qualifier, FFG and Asmodeo cover the cost of your flight to the Galactic Championship, as well as your entry to the entry badge to the event itself. Notably, not your hotel costs. You're on there. So if you do win and you are going to go and you're counting on this paid thing, remember, you are paying for your own housing at that point as well. Second new prize is especially exciting. Leader Showcase Awards. At each sector qualifier within the top 64, the top ranked player for each leader at the end of the event will receive a showcase variant of their leader card. This includes showcase variants of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, which have not been seen before. Only one person will earn each showcase variant for each leader, so be sure to give it all. This is actually a fairly interesting thing. I like this a lot. It does encourage people to try to get into that top 64 and do as well as they can with any leader that they are comfortable with. I wish it would have gone a little bit further down the line, because it does mean that there are going to be certain decks that are just never going to see that top 64. But if we do have, like we have had, a wide berth of characters in the top 64, we've seen the meta have a lot of representation. The top person running each of those leaders is going to get a showcase variant of their card, and that's going to be pretty darn cool. Depending on the specific leaders used, players may be sent their showcase awards after the event's conclusion. The Luke and Vader showcase variants will also be available on the prize wall at the Galactic Championship, so keep that in mind. We have regional qualifiers here. There's only 2 of these, one in the US and one in Europe. The one in US, hosted by Star City Games, on May 24th and 25th is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Woo woo, I'll be there. See you there. In Europe, this is being hosted by Fanfinity. It's going to be May 3rd through 4th in Lille, France. I apologize if I got that name incorrect. So Star City Games hosting this again. The dates do specifically say May 24th and 25th everywhere I can find them, which is strange to me because SCG Con will be in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the beginning of the month, May 2nd through 4th. So I'm going to trust that they have this correct and everything is correct, but keep the other dates May 2nd through 4th in mind if you're going to this regional qualifier in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because SCG Con is already there. So it could be a mistake. I don't think it is. I think they want to run this individually. SCG Cons never have a badge fee, so you don't have to worry about that, unlike the Galactic Championship for some reason. So you wouldn't have to worry about that. But we got it in France. We got it in Minnesota. We have this lovely mat here. Wow, this regional qualifier mat is absolutely incredible. We also got sleeves, and then we have Unnatural Life, Fet's Fire Spray, Kit Fisto, Count Dooku, and Mandalorian Armor as prize wall cards. So, and then just like sector qualifiers, regional qualifiers will award flights and badges to the Galactic Championship to top ranking players. However, where the sectors only award prizes to the winner and runner-up, regional qualifiers will award this prize to anyone who places in top 8 and above. Aside from that, Leader Showcase cards will also make an appearance in regional qualifiers, playing out exactly the same way for the sector qualifiers. Of course, since regionals are larger events, that means the place to the battle to place in top 64 will be much more fierce. So there you go. That's the information that we have. These sleeves are here. I want those executor sleeves. Those are pretty cool. Lots of fun stuff, lots of prizes, lots of interesting things that are going to be happening for these events. I will be at the regional. I will actually also be participating in the regional because it's still going to be part of set 4. Galactic Championship, I have no real, I mean, I don't really have, I'm not a competitive player. I have no chance in any of these, but I'm going to go to the regional. I'm going to have fun. If I O2 and drop, I'll do side events and do prize wall grinding. But during the Galactic Championship, I will also be prize wall grinding. So if you see me there, say what's up. Lots of fun stuff. Should be interesting. Good luck to anyone and everybody participating in any of these events. Tickets are flying fast. I think the OPE event in Milan, Italy is already sold out, but I'm not entirely sure. Please go check out those websites. They are in the links in the description below. Have fun and good luck. That's all we have for this week. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Lots of stuff to talk about, lots of things coming up. Sectors, regionals, Galactic Championships. Galactic Championship tickets went on sale last week. I was able to get mine, so I will see you all there. I'm going to be side event hunting, trying to do prize cards, prize walls, stuff like that, whatever the case may be. Lots of fun stuff. I've been watching some other CCs do some stuff. I'm actually very excited for Wedge. I'm very excited for Captain Phasma, even though we've only seen like, what, 6 cards? So there's a lot of cool and interesting things that are coming out of JTL. We've got almost all the leaders finished. I think we have 5 left, and we still have more than half the set to check out, which should be very interesting moving forward. Yeah, we're at 109 out of 262, so we have more than half the set to go through, and we have less than a month before the set comes out. So we're going to get a blitz of card previews towards the end of the month, and that's going to be very difficult for me, but very exciting for everybody, right? So thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. We'll be doing these until the set releases, and then we'll figure out what we're doing after that. It's going to be a very interesting period once Jump to Lightspeed releases, because we have those regionals, we have the sectors, we have the Galactic Championship, which will come out after set 5 releases. Absolutely insane stuff going on. PQ season is still chugging on. We've got a lot of competitive stuff happening, lots of Star Wars happening competitively around the world. Let's see what we can do about getting a little bit more casual stuff going, right? Like and comment on this video. Let me know what your favorite preview was. Let me know what your favorite thing out of JTL is so far. Subscribe to the Star Wars Unlimited YouTube channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. I've been RybackStun. You have been my audience. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in Lightspeed.